Bueno, es el turno de Argelia. Vamos a ver qué tiene que decir el presidente argelino. Y bueno, un país que me interesa porque bueno, está cerca de mi país y, bueno, pues se han tenido tensiones recientemente con todo el tema del gas y las relaciones con Marruecos. Así que vamos a ver, lo pongo un poco para ver si habla algo de Marruecos y tal, ¿no? Y de la situación del Sáhara Occidental, ya que posiblemente es el país que más le impacte, porque la gran mayoría de los refugiados saharauis están en Argelia, entonces en campamento en Argelia. Entonces, pues bueno, vamos a ver qué comenta Argelia y si le mete un poco de cera a España y Marruecos sobre la situación del Sáhara Occidental, ya que se está hablando mucho de Ucrania, de Cuba y de Palestina, pero esta es una situación similar o igual a la de Palestina. Sin embargo, no se suele, hasta ahora que yo haya visto, solo la ha tratado Pedro Sánchez y no me ha gustado mucho los términos en los que ha hablado respecto a esta situación. Así que vamos a ver qué nos comenta el presidente argelino.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of God, the compassionate, may peace be with the messengers. Your Excellency, President of the General Assembly, Excellency, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me on this occasion to greet all the heads of state and delegations that are participating in the 78th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. I also would like to congratulate Mr. Denis Francis for his appointment, election to be the president of the session, and I wish him every success in this noble task. I also want to thank Mr. Chaba Koroshi, president of the previous session, for his outstanding work. I would sincerely thank the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, and I would like to express my wholehearted support for the efforts that he has undertaken to strengthen the role of our organization and to promote it in order to respond to the aspirations of our peoples. Mr. President, we are here in this global hall that welcomes the entire world with all its differences and diversity, and we are here. We hope to promote dialogue and discussion amongst us and to make this hall a true basis for making the world a world of cooperation, solidarity, and equality among nations. My country, and this is the case for over 50 years from this noble tribune, has pointed to the dysfunctioning of the global order and has pointed the way towards correcting this global order in order to achieve greater equality among our member states. Mr. President, the conflicts and crises in our world have reached unprecedented levels. Millions of people have been displaced, and international relations have been transformed from ties of cooperation and consensus to conflict, and this has threatened international organizations in the midst of a world that is experiencing emergencies under extreme pressure. In the face of these difficult situations and multiple crises, the weakening of the role of the Security Council over the past few years is evident. This is a role that is set out in the Charter of the United Nations. That role is to maintain international peace and security, and in particular by preventing the use of force and by tackling the causes that threaten peace, international peace and security, by ensuring a peaceful resolution of conflicts. I think the time has come for all of us to reflect together, to uphold the principles and goals of the UN Charter, and to strengthen our common engagement, and to establish a sound framework for strengthening international cooperation and making it more effective, and especially on major issues. The goal should be to consolidate international peace and security and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in a multipolar world. Following this logic, Algeria, which is preparing itself to be a non-permanent member of the Security Council and aware of the responsibility that is incumbent on us, especially in the face of the challenges that the international community is facing. Bearing all that in mind, I want to take this opportunity to once again express my gratitude to the 184 member states who voted in favor of Algeria to be a non-permanent member. This is an expression of trust that Algeria will seek to justify and uphold throughout its term in the Security Council. We are ready to strengthen cooperation with all member states on the Security Council and in the UN as a whole. We also are ready to take advantage of our extensive experience in mediation and seeking political solutions to peacefully resolve conflicts. Very much in this spirit, my country will sit on the Security Council, bringing with it the aspirations of the African continent and the Arab world, and calling for overcoming conflicts and focusing on lasting solutions to conflicts by dealing with the root causes of these conflicts. Mr. President, any effort to strengthen joint international action forces us to respond to the constant appeals to strengthen the multilateral system by reforming the main organs of our organization in order to make them more transparent and ensure the necessary balance among the main organs and ensure an equitable geographical distribution, and thus revitalize the central role of the General Assembly as the only organ which truly reflects the diversity of our international community. This is a key element in strengthening equality among states and strengthening the pillar of a true democracy. Also, to make progress on intergovernmental negotiations on reforming the Security Council is essential, based on an inclusive and comprehensive approach. This should be an absolute priority for the international community in order to find a consensus and to implement a true reform that ensures greater representation and transparency. And here I reiterate the commitment of Algeria with regard to the common African position and the need to put an end to the historic injustice against the African continent. Mr. President, Algeria is aware of the price of freedom. We will never abandon just causes, and we will always support oppressed peoples who are fighting for their freedom. This is why we have always supported the Palestinian cause, in order to allow the brethren Palestinian people to exercise their inalienable rights and to establish their own independent states based on the 4th of June 1967 borders with Jerusalem as the capital in conformity with the international resolutions and international law. As part of our support for the Palestinian cause, which is a just cause, last year my country, under my own personal supervision, held a summit to bring together the various Palestinian factions at a summit which was crowned with the adoption of the Algiers Declaration. In this context, I would like to reiterate our attachment to the Arab Initiative, Peace Initiative, as a framework for resolving the Palestinian issue and putting an end to the occupation, which is the main cause of instability in the Middle East region. I want to appeal to the conscience of the international community to assume its moral and historical responsibility and allow the Palestinian people to regain their rights and decide on their future. Furthermore, I would like to take this opportunity to call on the International Court of Justice to follow up on the request formulated by the UN General Assembly on the 30th of December of 2022 by giving an advisory opinion regarding the Israeli practices that affect human rights on occupied Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem. We aspire to towards a victory and to honor the combat of the Palestinian people who have suffered so much and who have sacrificed so much living under occupation. And from this tribune, I also call on the Security Council to adopt a resolution pursuant to which it would guarantee the two-state solution, which enjoys a consensus from the international community, and by virtue of which it would be possible to put an end to the unilateral practices of the occupying authority, starting with the activity of settlement building on occupied Palestinian territory.
We once again call on, and I insist on, the need for an extraordinary session of the General Assembly to grant the State of Palestine a status of full-fledged member. And I repeat, we call once again for an extraordinary session in order to grant the State of Palestine the status of permanent member within the United Nations General Assembly.
Esa es una de las resoluciones que se van a votar en estas sesiones. Veremos a ver qué salen, pero bueno, Estados Unidos e Israel obviamente se pondrán en contra y veremos a ver si se les incluye como país aceptado, como miembro permanente dentro de la Asamblea General, que ahora mismo no son miembros permanentes, tienen como un estatus ahí, pueden formar parte de las sesiones, pero no tienen capacidades reales. No sé muy bien cuál es el estatus exactamente de Palestina, pero no es un miembro de pleno derecho en la Organización de las Naciones Unidas. Y me parece, pues bueno, una cosa tremenda.
We are proud that what our organization has accomplished in terms of decolonization in a number of regions, and we aspire to a definitive solution and putting an end to colonization with the last African colony, because indeed an entire people in Western Sahara is deprived of its fundamental right to self-determination, and it is necessary to organize a free and comprehensive
Referéndum.
referendum under the rules
Sí, señor.
adopted by the Security Council in 1991.
91.
This was approved by both parties, and it's time to implement it. It's waiting for that, given that reality. And given attempts geared to creating legitimacy based on illegitimacy, it is incumbent on the United Nations to preserve the credibility of these resolutions
Pues sí,
and
porque
to
mucha
support
credibilidad no
full
tiene.
and complete implementation of the resolutions of our organization and preserve its reputation. In that context, I would reiterate here our support for the Secretary General's efforts, those of the Secretary General of the United Nations and his staff, efforts undertaken to relaunch the negotiating process, direct negotiations, and to organize a referendum to allow the Sahrawi people to self-determination according to the Security Council resolutions. Mr. President,
Ojalá sea el caso.
my country is closely following, and with great concern, what is occurring in some countries, friendly nations, sister nations, and we are undertaking every effort in order to find peaceful solutions and to bring points of view and positions closer together.
¿Se viene para
Turning now
Marruecos?
to the situation in Libya,
Vale.
brother nation. Here, I reiterate our support to the United Nations efforts in order to find a political solution led by the Libyan people themselves and allowing them to preserve the unity of Libya, its sovereignty, and its territorial integrity. Turning to the situation in Mali. Algeria plays a lead role in the area of international mediation and presides the follow-up committee for implementation of the peace agreement and peace and reconciliation agreement in the Algiers process, is resolute in its efforts to overcome the obstacles in that sister nation. And here we reiterate our position, which is refusing resorting to force in order to settle conflicts. With regard to developments in Niger, a neighboring country, Algeria reiterates its attachment to the return to a constitutional order through peaceful means
Mira, también se va a
and
pronunciar
to make
respecto al
sure that
tema.
diplomatic and political solutions prevail while respecting the rule of law. We call for vigilance, given the intentions of foreign intervention, military intervention, because this could have dangerous repercussions on peace and stability in Niger and in the region as a whole. At the same time, the very concerning situation in Sudan calls upon us to call on all parties to the conflict to put an end to it and to pursue dialogue, put an end to the fighting. This situation has very serious repercussions on the humanitarian situation in that country. This vulnerable and unstable situation is casting a shadow over the entire Sahel region and the Sahara region. Its development has been stopped, and it is now experiencing famine. Turning to the issue of climate change, this is further exacerbating instability and is fueling terrorist groups who are making this region one that they use as a base for their criminal activities. In that context, Algeria will spare no efforts to support development in the region, and we are prepared to share our experience in the area of combating terrorism and extreme violent extremism. We would like to participate in an extraordinary session and the 16th extraordinary session of the African Union in Malibu in 2022 in that regard. And as a coordinator for fighting terrorism and violent extremism in Africa, we presented a report at that time. This report looked at the development of terrorist threats throughout Africa and mechanisms to address those threats. This is a report that is being looked at a number of different practical mechanisms to strengthen the fight against terrorism in Africa. It also underscores the importance of putting the fight against terrorism as a priority, and one that requires common African action. Moreover, I'd like to look at Algeria's contribution as an international mediator is not confined just to the African continent and our region. We also participate in the Arab Contact Group's efforts geared to relaunching the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Mr.
También
President,
se va a hacer cargo de la situación en Europa del Este.
8 years after the adoption of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and the Addis Ababa Plan of Action, a number of states that are currently developing face challenges. And this means they need more solidarity from the international community in order to achieve a better world and to have a more equitable and effective economic model, which would make it possible to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Algeria adopted the Sustainable Development Program and has made it a national priority and has integrated it into all the plans, strategies, and programs that were launched by the government. This, in turn, made it possible for us to achieve considerable results in the area of sustainable development, especially with regard to education, healthcare, electricity, and water. Speaking of water, my country launched a desalination of ocean waters program to be completed by the end of 2024, and we will be at the end of next year able to produce over 1 billion metric tons of water on an annual basis through desalination. Mr. President, my country has always enjoyed the support of and confidence of the Human Rights Council and is party to most international human rights treaties. We ensure that our cooperation with the Council, the Human Rights Council, and that we work with all of the human rights treaty bodies created in virtue of various human rights treaties and with regard to the Universal Periodic Review. And to that end, in November of 2022, my country presented its 4th national report in the context of the UPR. My country is firmly convinced that respecting human rights and promoting human rights is the very cornerstone of any political system which is credible. And that's why we work to strengthen human rights by all means available to us. And this conviction is due to the Algerian people's attachment to human rights. And my country's constitution was amended in 2020 based on our convictions and the belief in the importance of strengthening fundamental freedoms and human rights. The amendments bans any explicit undermining of these freedoms and liberties. It also creates equality between all citizens, men and women, in terms of rights and duties, and strengthens the effective participation of all, especially in the area of promoting women's rights and the empowerment of women economically and politically, and women's participation in positions of responsibility. We are also seeking to guarantee a principle of equality in the labor market and to strengthen the role played by women in the area of peace and security and strengthening the status of women in all areas of life, be it at the national, continental, or international levels. A practical national plan in the context of implementing Resolution 1325 of the Security Council has been implemented. It was adopted in October 2000, and a plan was adopted in order to strengthen the role of women in prevention of and resolution of conflicts in keeping with the principles of our foreign policy. Algeria has many young people and a great deal of capacity. Young people account for 70% of our national population. Algeria, therefore, adopted measures in order to provide institutional management level with the means necessary to build capacity for young people and to integrate young people as a driving force of the process of sustainable development and a driving force behind the economic, political, and cultural arenas. By way of conclusion, we aspire to a world where peace and prosperity would reign, peace and prosperity for all human beings under the aegis of the United Nations. We must show sincere determination and strong commitment in order to meet the legitimate needs of our people so that our people can enjoy this peace and prosperity. May the blessings be upon you.
Vale, pues esa ha sido la intervención del presidente de Argelia, Abdemal, del Mahdi. Perdón por la pronunciación, no, obviamente lo he dicho mal, pero bueno, me ha gustado mucho su defensa de Palestina, que hablase de las situaciones en África, tanto en el Chad como en Sudán, como en Mali, como en Níger, y obviamente pues lo que más me ha gustado y por el motivo por el cual pues bueno, me he puesto Argelia es sin duda la situación del Sáhara Occidental, que es una de las situaciones, de los asuntos pendientes que tiene la ONU y por las que la ONU no goza quizás con la legitimidad y la credibilidad que debería tener, ¿no? En la situación también habla de Palestina, ¿no? Son para mí las dos grandes situaciones que la ONU pues, demuestra que es un organismo vacío de poder. Y bueno, pues me parece bien que haya hablado de ello y tampoco esperaba menos, ¿no? Dado que, pues como he dicho antes, Argelia es es el país posiblemente que más le afecte esta situación, obviamente después del propio Sáhara Occidental. Pero bueno, ha estado bien el discurso en favor de los derechos humanos, hablando de cómo Argelia pues ha mejorado en ese tema y espero que así sea. Y nada, poco más que decir. No he hablado mucho del tema de la energía, he hablado así poco tangencialmente, pero bueno, Argelia, como sabemos, es un actor principal, especialmente en lo que concierne al sur de Europa, en la producción de electricidad por el gas que tienen, ¿no? Y pues bueno, tradicionalmente ha comerciado bastante gas con España y ahora lo está haciendo con Italia. Así que, pues nada, veremos a ver qué pasa. Un país que tradicionalmente ha tenido muchos vínculos con Rusia, pero también está tomando una posición, digamos, de coherencia en cuanto a sus aspiraciones de intentar mediar para resolver el conflicto que hay entre producto de la invasión de Rusia hacia Ucrania. Pero bueno, bien por el presidente de Argelia. Muchas gracias por haber visto el vídeo hasta el final. Aquí te dejo una lista de reproducción relacionada con la temática del vídeo y aquí un vídeo que YouTube cree que te puede gustar. También te dejo el botón para suscribirte en caso que quieras hacerlo. Muchas gracias y hasta la próxima.